Brett Allen here chatting with Michael Gaston of Chicago PD and a million other different projects as well. And he is the newest police chief to take on the city of Chicago and the intelligence unit and all of those things. Michael, thanks for your time today. It's a pleasure to meet you and chat with you.
That's my pleasure, man. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Well, we'll start with Chicago PD because you came on this season and you, I guess I mentioned, the newest to take on the unit and the city and all of these very intricate storylines. I'm very curious, what has your experience been working on the show? Because we love watching you, and I know the fans love your character as well, because he's a little bit different than the previous chiefs, so to speak, that have been on the show.
Again, thanks for having me. This isn't always the case, but I'm really happy to talk about my experience at Chicago PD. I loved it. I loved it. It is particularly for a show that's been on. The show's now in its 10th season. It's one of the most warm, kind of loving, creative TV sets I've been on, and a lot of that is a credit to Gwen Segan and the vibe that she puts down, just from the top down kind of thing. And on the set, really sort of the top down it's sort of Jason Begay. So you sort of, if your number one actor and the person running the show are good people and they're kind, and certainly in my relationship with them, both of them were incredibly great to me. I loved working with Jason. Gwen was an incredibly collaborative showrunner. There's a thing about Chicago PD that is also unique in my experience, in that they have promoted from within. Gwen started as Matt Olmstead's assistant, I believe, when he helped create the show, 10, 11 years ago. She now is the showrunner, head writer, showrunner. Chad Sexton, who was a second AD on it, is now the producing director. So the sort of, is an executive producer who directs, 4 or 5 episodes a season, but also just kind of supervises all the other directors, and is just a tremendous guy. So there's a very positive, very healthy culture of promoting from within. And certainly family is an overused and ridiculous word to use when referring to a multi-million dollar operation that makes TV shows about fake cops. But it's got as close to that vibe as any healthy family that I've ever been around. It's not the Manson family. It was a really, really wonderful place to work. And then you sort of add on these amazing, Amy Morton's one of the great people on the planet. Tracy Spiridakis, like just one after another, Leroyce and Patty and Marina, just and then I was there for the end of Jesse's run, and Jesse's just a tremendous dude. So like I say, I was just incredibly lucky to land there.
Yeah, I mean, you do a fantastic job on the show, and I think your character brought something different to the season than what has been there before. We've talked to many of the cast from the show, Jason and Tracy. I mean, pretty much everybody at this point. And it's always fun when somebody new comes along, because it's always a good shakeup. You know what I'm saying? And to sort of kind of add something different to the storyline. Because as you said, it's been, I think 10 years now that it's been on. And I recently just started going back watching episodes from the first season, and it has changed entirely since it began, even just down to the very basics of behaviors, as you mentioned, playing police officers on television. If you could, I think most people have seen you and on the show, but how would you describe your character and your take on playing the chief this season, and how he has sort of come in and is almost pro-intelligence to a degree, as in the past some of the others have not necessarily been a friend, but maybe a frenemy, I guess would be a way to describe it a little bit, to
Yeah.
especially to Voight, and everybody else that works for him.
Well, I think because they knew where it was headed. Um, Not to spoil anything, I'm not sure when you're putting this thing on, but when you see where it's headed toward the mid-season finale, episode 9, I think it was really important and a very smart decision that Gwen and the writers made to have this chief have a kind of an emotional connection to Voight, and be essentially a good guy, that he
Yeah.
was looking out for them so that there would be the fall that we see, through his protection of his son. Um, so right away, one of the things that was enjoyable for me was that they made him a whole person. That
Yeah.
he didn't just come on as a two-dimensional or one-dimensional villain or tough guy or exposition device. Sometimes I played a lot of parts where you just come on and your job is really just to give the audience information for the story, and you're not really a human being. Whereas in my case, integral to the story is that I raised a son alone after his mother passed away, and he's my only child, and he's profoundly let's just underestimate, profoundly flawed as a human being, and I have done everything, my character's done everything he can to stand by that kid. And the other thing that they made him be really was recently promoted, and somebody who spent a lot longer than most would just doing a traditional job within the narcotics division. And he says early on, I think in the first episode, that he just figured he would die in narcotics.
Yeah.
And that was even a reaction to his son being a drug addict. So, everything about the guy is three-dimensional, which, as I said, is just not always what you come on when you're a guest star. The three dimensions are handed out amongst the regulars, and the guests come on to be, sort of devices. So getting to be something other than just a device was huge for me. I didn't know I was. This is just going backwards a little ways. I did a long job on this thing called 5 Days at Memorial on Apple TV, which is still running. And
Yes, we've had several casts from that. That was great
oh,
too, by
good,
the way.
yeah. Oh, I'm
I
glad.
was going to mention that. Yeah, we had Julianne, we had Robert. We had pretty much the whole cast. Yeah, that was phenomenal.
Well,
Phenomenal.
good. I'm glad to hear you say that. I dislike most of what I'm affiliated with, but I have to say that's one of the things I'm the most proud of. I'm really, really proud of it. I came off that, and then I had to have foot surgery, and which turned out to be kind of a big deal, and I was laid up for a lot longer than I thought I should be, and than I thought I would be, and suddenly, after not working for a long time and being kind of down, this job just kind of dropped out of the sky, and it was pretty quick. I think they probably lost somebody fancier that they were hoping on getting, and then suddenly I just got an offer, and bang, I was off to Chicago. And I didn't look too much. I didn't look too closely at it. I just really wanted to get back to work. I'm somebody who I just love to work, not just needing to work for financial purposes like everybody else. But I just really, really enjoy working, even when it's not an ideal situation. But then for me to land in one of the best cities in the country, amongst one of the smoothest running cast, and I was prepared for there to be real for it not necessarily to be a comfortable place. Often shows that run really long, people are just sick of each other and they don't want to really be there anymore, but they have to be there, whatever. And there wasn't any of that dynamic at all. Quite the opposite. People were just great. So I forget what your question was, but I was really grateful to have the job, and really lucky.
Yeah,
Really lucky.
no, you answered it perfectly. So that takes me to my next one here. In you have done a lot of different things. What do you look for as an actor or a storyteller when choosing a part? Outside of the obvious things of working and that sort of thing, when you do have the time to look at something, say like 5 days or anything else that you've done along the way, like what is important to you as an actor?
Well, it's sort of this, I'm repeating myself, but with 5 days, one of the reasons that was so satisfying was he too had a whole story. And he was a happily married man. He had children. He had lost a child recently, an adult child. He was just an incredibly rich, full, complicated guy. And then it was written by Carlton Cuse and John Ridley, who were two of the best writers
Mhm.
in certainly in American television. And it's just easier to be better when the writing is better.
Yeah.
I think this is this I maybe I'm likely wrong about this, but I think I heard an interview with Hugh Grant of all people, who said anytime he's ever been nominated, I'm totally paraphrasing here, anytime he's ever been nominated for a role, he felt like the writing should have been nominated, and there should be actually a writing category for best character,
Hmm.
because it's so much easier to be good and interesting and enjoy yourself, but also suddenly everybody thinks you're the greatest goddamn actor in the world, because all you're doing is saying really, really well constructed dialogue, um, built to create a full person.
Yeah.
When you're not doing that, and which is mostly what I've spent my career doing, it's just really hard. And so I've gotten hired again and again because I'm white, because I look like a cop, because I project as sort of a straight person, and that's what people wanted then. And if you weren't those things, it was just incredibly difficult to get any of those other jobs. I mean, that's largely what I lay my good fortune at the feet of. It's just what I look like, and then I got some good training, and I got some other good bits of luck. Um, so what I look for, what I'm after always, is a fully drawn human. What I mostly have to do is accept less than that and try to provide that in ways that are off the lines.
Yeah. No, I was wondering about that because I've had other actors, um, Stephen Tobolowsky. I'm sure you're
He's
familiar with.
amazing, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he said something very interesting, similarly to you as well. Early on in his career, not to name drop, but to draw to your point, he was getting cast in a lot of these different types of roles. And I think it was Thelma and Louise was really kind of where it started for him. And he was playing, I think, some sort of agent or whatever.
yeah, he was an FBI agent in that. I
Yeah,
saw that.
but that whole
Yeah.
scene that he's in, like he created that like in his backstory, like, and just sort of went with it. And the directors at first were like, what is this guy doing? And then they start having these whisper conversations. And he created this entire character out of something that was meant to be just very like straight FBI agent,
Yeah.
But so I appreciate that. And that's, excuse me, in all sincerity, one of the things that I admire about you and what others like you do is you take these characters and you turn them into something that the audience can connect with. And I think that's what I find the most fascinating about your career as an
No.
actor. Yeah, it's just because
Oh,
it's so
thanks.
different. I mean, even though you might have a look, I mean, they're all different, so to speak, right? If you take your career and you put it together, bookend to bookend, because I've watched a lot of your work, it's not all the same. So I really do mean that, and I think that's what's fun about your job, watching it.
Thanks. Yeah. No, me too. Absolutely. I'm not saying that they're all the same, but they generally have.
Yeah.
If you're doing diagrams, the vast majority of them have a few characteristics, and they're there to do certain things, and then you try to spice it up however the hell you can. I mean, Steven's one of the best actors, but let alone best character actors who've ever. I'm such a profound admirer of his work. But what he was describing, which is really different than what I'm doing right now, is that he was doing that on a film set. where the writer isn't really there and the director is in charge. And in that case, the director I've worked with, an amazing dude, Ridley Scott, he doesn't give a shit about the writing. So you can just kind of, if he has your respect, sorry, if you have his respect, he'll just let you go off. And particularly if you get one or two takes where you actually said just what they wrote, they'll let you go off. And if you're interesting, they'll use it. TV is run by the writer, so it's a very, very different dynamic. There's not the same kind of ability to just kind of riff and go off and make shit up. It's also always on a much tighter schedule, tighter financial, not always, but generally speaking, it's if you're comparing big budget TV to big budget films, we got 8 days. That's just how it is, and it's all got to get done. In the case of Chicago PD, they do a 9th day and cross over the first day and the last day of the episodes, one after another, shot on the same day with different units. But basically, it's an 8-day thing, and you can't just start making shit up. The writers are not. You will get canned.
You're like, thank you, we're good.
Yeah, what do you
got
what do
5
you do?
other people.
You think you're a writer? Huh, interesting. Whereas most film sets, the writer's not even allowed, or there were 9 writers. There was a writer that they bought the thing from a year ago, 5 years ago, and there have been 8 different passes, and then it's a director's medium. So it's really just a different dynamic.
Yeah, I had the privilege of doing some stand-in work on a show in plain sight in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And I do remember
Mary, right?
Yeah.
Was that Mary? Yeah.
Mary and Paul Ben and
right.
all great people. But to your point, yeah, there was somebody who was improvising a little bit or doing something that they weren't supposed to do. And I heard Mary go, someone's getting creative over there. We need to figure this out. And this is not going to work. And I overheard her saying that to the people in Video Village, hanging out over there and stuff. And she was, she was kind of known for sort of running that whole show basically. And yeah, there was a couple times it was just kind of funny. What is that? Even to the background, someone was carrying a teddy bear or something, and someone's like, who's getting creative over in props? This is not what we're here for.
That's
anyway,
not what we're doing here.
I digress. It's a very tight run ship and very long days. And, literally what people don't get is what you're watching in real time oftentimes has been filmed, sometimes just days before. And it's just making it to air because there's a lot to it. One last question. Again, all the great things that you've done, where did the journey begin for you as an actor? When did you get bit by the bug?
I mean, it's certainly, I just turned 60, so it's a long time ago now. But it was late, sort of in terms of most people's stories. It was really late in college. I did a couple things in middle school. I did a skit, and in high school, I did the senior play because every jerk off guy in the senior class did the play. But that wasn't my thing. And I went to college kind of near where I grew up, and was studying history and English and education. I was going to be a teacher, was going to be a coach. Then I got involved in educational policy, and I was working for the teachers union in Sacramento, and that's where it was headed. And then I just took this little theater games class for non-majors, and because I needed some credits just to graduate. And my teacher was this amazing Broadway actress named Elizabeth Ward Land, who I'm still very close to, and she was a grad student, so she was only a year older than me. I mean, she was a first year grad student, and I was a 5th year senior. She actually lives in my hometown now. We both live in New Jersey. She was like, you should do more of this. It was really that simple. I mean, most good things that I have in my life is because a teacher took me aside and was encouraging. I think a lot of us can say that. And so in this case, it was Liz, and she was like, yeah, you should audition for some stuff. So I auditioned for something, didn't get it, a school thing. Kind of put it away, and that was in I guess sort of a spring semester, and then I had one more, or spring quarter. I had one more quarter to do, and I'd been a college football player briefly, and I was a punter. I didn't want to go out and get the shit beat out of me anymore, but I was willing to go back out and punt. I was just bored. I didn't have a lot. I had like 2 classes I had to take and to graduate, but then I injured my foot. I stepped in a sprinkler hole, and I was out rehabbing it, and Liz rode by on her bike. This is true. She rode by on her bike, and I stopped her and I said, "Hey, that thing you said about me doing plays, do you still think that's true?" And she said, "Yeah, you should come with me right now. They're auditioning for stuff." And I went, and I booked 2 plays that day at UC Davis. Had to chose one. Very quickly got invited to join their MFA program in acting. Did it for a quarter. Needed to get out of there because it wasn't real. It wasn't like really connected to the profession at all. It was mostly for training academics, and I got into a program in New York called the National Shakespeare Conservatory. It doesn't exist anymore, mostly because it was neither National Shakespeare or a conservatory, really. But it got me to New York, and a guy that I was doing my first play with in Davis was at NYU in the graduate acting program. He was in a class that included Academy Award winner Marcia Gay Harden, and Rainn Wilson was a year behind him. They were just like, this was where the real people, the real actors were. And I had a teacher at the bad conservatory who was a decent enough guy that he was like, "Yeah, you got to get out of here," and he helped me with my pieces, got me into NYU, helped me get into NYU, and that's really where everything happened. That's when things got kind of real, and that was a 3-year program. And when I finished that, I stepped into Shakespeare in the Park, and then I went to DC and did a year of Shakespeare at the Folger Shakespeare Theater in Washington D.C. and went on tour with a Neil Simon play, mostly plays and stuff, because I was only like 27, 28, 29 years old, but I was still as bald as I am now. So I didn't really have a TV face. And back then there wasn't much TV happening anywhere except LA, where I didn't really want to live. That's significantly changed for the better now. So yeah, that's believe it or not, that's the short version.
Crazy. Well, speaking of Davis, I lived in Vacaville for years before.
Cowtown.
Yeah, Vacaville, before I moved here to Colorado.
No kidding.
Yeah, many years. The outlet malls, the whole
sure.
match.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very familiar with the areas that you're describing there. Sacramento, Davis. They have
Vacaville's like 15 miles from Davis or something, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful area over there. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on everything. We loved you watching you on this Chicago PD, and of course all the other things that you've done. But I really appreciate your time, Michael, and spending it with us this morning. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks. I really appreciate you asking. It's really good talk to you, but take care.
Absolutely.